Well, hello everyone. Thank you again for joining me for a whiskey review. Tonight's review, Old Forester Rye whiskey. So what's interesting about Old Forester Rye whiskey? Well, a few things. First and foremost, it's brand new, relatively on the market. It was released in February of this year, 2019. I think it was a national release on February 1st, as a matter of fact. I know in my part of the country, here in Ohio, it is actually not on store shelves yet. I think I procured this one out in Indiana and read some pretty rave reviews about it. So I was pretty excited to try it. And I gotta say, every time I start patting myself on the back and telling you guys how good I am at cracking into bottles for the first time with you, I tend to have to, kind of swallow my words a little bit there. So as you can see, not the first time I've tried this. I was on the road on doing some business, so I, was in the hotel, and one thing led to another. So yeah, Old Forester Rye. What's cool about Old Forester Rye? Like I said, I kind of teased that a bit. So it is the first new grain recipe that Old Forester, who's been around for a million years, they give their self credit for being the first producer to bottle bourbon. They've only done bourbon for like I said, over a century, and yeah, so this is the first time they've done a traditional rye whiskey, so kind of cool in and of itself. Kind of to make things a little cooler, this is kind of an homage to an old brand called Normandy Rye. I don't think it's the exact mash bill, but it's kind of close, or what they kind of thought it was. So it's kind of, again, sort of an homage to a brand that they used to own that they don't own anymore. And that was kind of their last recipe at Brown-Forman / Old Forester. So yeah, Normandy Rye. That's the cool little historic fact for you there. Also, a little something unique about Old Forester's rye. It's not what they call a Kentucky rye. So Kentucky rye is kind of a term. It's an unofficial term that basically means a rye whiskey, but just barely, right? So you think of a rye whiskey, and a lot of times you're thinking 80, 90. There's a few 100% rye whiskeys out there. Kentucky's done a really good job because, think about it, it's full of bourbon producers, first and foremost. And there's been kind of ebbs and flows with rye production over the decades. But for a long time, rye was almost gone in the U.S. And it's also a pain in the ass to distill, so it was almost gone. And so a lot of times Kentucky distillers were kind of skirting that percentage law. Just like bourbon is 51% corn, rye's got to be at least 51% rye to call it a straight rye whiskey. And oftentimes Kentucky distillers are using a very small, just barely over that 50% threshold. This one is actually a 65% rye, 20% malted barley, and 15% corn. So a little high on the malted barley and the rye, which is going to get a little bit different flavor profile. It's right around 23 bucks, which is an amazing value for, by the way, 100 proof rye whiskey. It is a non-age statement, no problem with that. To me, and I'll give you a little tease here about my opinions on this before we get into the actual review. And while I do that, I'll pour it, and we'll get back to the presentation here in a minute. But to me, it kind of screams, I think they identified that there was a need in the market for a rye whiskey for, if nothing else, some of the rye cocktails that are big in the cocktail scene. They had a void there, wanted to fill that with an affordable option, give bartenders an Old Forester to grab off a shelf, opposed to a Bullet or any other rye competitors that are there. And at 100 proof, and like I said, less than 25 bucks, there's a really solid argument to be made that that's a great value. I'll tell you my opinions on that here in a minute, but yeah, there's been a lot of talk about this being, one of the best value whiskeys you're going to find on the market, just because of, again, price, proof, and obviously how the fluid tastes. Yeah, Chris Morris, the master distiller at Old Forester, and Jackie Zykam, who is the master taster, have very much like Michter's and some of those folks on Whiskey Row, Angel's Envy even, recently, for whatever reason, are just knocking the ball out of the park with consistency. Just everything they touch turns into gold. The 2018 birthday bourbon was amazing. The The 1910, the 1920, amazing. The Statesman, really solid. Everything they've done, and that's a lot. By the way, it's a lot of new products to hit the street in, a few years. And they've done a really nice job with it. And this one's getting some rave reviews, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts. So I get a lot of floral notes, more floral notes than you're typically going to get in a rye. A lot of mint, which is a little more common, I would say. Citrus fruits. And the reason I say citrus fruits is because I'm not sure if it's more lemony or limey, but it's something along those lines. Honey. But all that liveliness, that brightness that you want in a rye, that again, oftentimes you don't get in a more sweet, robust, leathery, caramely, burnt sugary bourbon profile. Very lively. Good. It's you're just smelling it right off the top, and it just seems like this is going to come through in a cocktail, which again, in my opinion, is what this was kind of created for. All right, no further ado, let's dive in. Nice. Yeah. I like it in my mouth. A little buttery. So I told you it had citrus notes on the nose. I get more of like a lemon zest specifically. Kind of on the back of the palate. Second time around was a little more peppercorn, spice, a little bit of heat. Again, you're going to get that in a rye, 100 proof especially. There's something else there that I'm having a hard time identifying. And it's sort of that minty flavor, but I don't think it's, maybe a mint. Maybe like kind of like, if you have a cocktail and they're gonna press mint and kind of, infuse that on the top of the glass to kind of give that little essence, that oily mint flavor. Maybe a little bit of that, but I'm not quite sure. I think it might be more, so close. I got it on that sip. It's more like pine. Like if you were to maybe nibble on like a pine needle, you get that very distinct flavor. I think that's what it is. Maybe on top of the mint. Maybe it's both. But that's the one I was trying to think about. Very nice. I'll be honest, I like this a little more this second time around or third time around, whatever it's been. And that's what's so funny. I was talking to my wife earlier when I reviewed the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof yesterday. I liked it during our time here together, but once the camera turned off and I finished it, I really liked it even a little bit more. And if I would have graded that bourbon or that Tennessee whiskey, look at that, I almost slipped up. But if I'd have graded that 10 minutes later, I'd have given it a higher score. So. And none of you have recently, which I appreciate, but certainly don't give these scores more credence, more credit than they deserve. They're just, us talking, a little fun. Yeah, I like this a little bit more than I did. So from a score standpoint, I will give this a 7.5. I went in thinking I might not crack 7. Because I didn't like this as much as I am tonight, a week or two ago when I first cracked this bottle. And hell, as you guys know, maybe some of that's because, we got a little oxygen interaction and that's changed the flavor profile a bit. I think it's a tremendous value. I don't quite still think that it is God's gift to whiskey or rye. I think it's very solid. I would absolutely recommend it in a rye-based cocktail. But again, I'm not, quite in love with it as many others are. But very, very nice rye whiskey. Once it comes to your part of the country, I'd suggest picking it up. I certainly will. When it comes to Ohio, I'll probably grab another bottle of this because, again, any rye cocktail is going to fit very nicely and do the job that you're intending to do. So thanks, guys. Until next time, I have another one up my sleeve probably tonight. We'll see you soon. And as always, glasses up.